Hey YouTubers, today we are going to pull this gear case off the 90 Honda, the EFI one, not the carbureted. So I'm going to show you guys on this also what to look for if you are doing the carbureted 90, because it's been a little while, but it's not like this one at all. So what we've got here is we've got our bolts on the side, we've got two on this side, two on the other. So you got those you have to remove. Also underneath the back here, you have your trim tab. On I think the older style 90s, you still have to remove this to get the bolt that's underneath it. Almost every gear case you take off of anything, you've got to take this trim tab off the back here to get the bolt that's underneath it. Usually that's the one that holds everybody up, that kind of fouls them up. On this one, we have this little keeper right here. This right here is a 6mm Allen head screw. Here's our tool, and so the one we used on this one. It is a 6mm size. Unscrew that off of there, pull that down, and then underneath it we have a 14mm hex head. So we've got 14mm on the sides. We're going to use that to take those off, and we need a 14mm socket for up on the inside. So we're going to take these off, and I'm going to show you guys what's next. Alright, so we've got all the bolts out. So there's these two on this side, it's the port side. You got two on the starboard side, and you've also got your one that's underneath the back over here, underneath that plastic little plate. This is one of the tricks I'm going to show you guys that we do as mechanics. Right here you have your shift shaft. This shift shaft will actually fall down in place and go with it. When you pull everything out, a lot of times this will pop off and slide down. It has a flat front on it, so it can only go back on one way. But what we do is we take a pair of vice grips, we just clamp it on lightly right here so that this cannot fall down at all. So it stays right in place here, and it helps you out. Instead of one more thing to come out the fall with it, it stays in place. And when you need to put the gear case back in, you can just wiggle this around a bit and guide it so it goes back on the front of your shifter. That's one of the tricks you guys should remember. So remember to have a pair of vice grips with you. We're going to pull this last one off now, and we're going to pull it down. We're going to see what happens here. Alright, not too bad. We got a slight gap right here. So, what you can do, that I'm going to show you on here. Alright, this is your cavitation plate. Right here. You do not hit this fin with anything hard. It will snap off and break. You'll see a lot of times you'll have cracks and stuff back here. Sometimes that's from something getting caught in the prop and coming up and hitting it. Sometimes it's from people trying to remove the gear case when they're hitting it. So what you want to do is you want to hit on the back side up here. This is the spot you want to bang on a little bit just to give yourself some gap. But you use either a mallet and you bang on the back here gently. See how it just made the gap right there? That's exactly what you want. If you don't have a mallet, a 2x4. It's softer than the metal, and you can just bang and tap on it nicely on the back there. And that's it. If you don't get it, and it is salted in place really bad, and you can just get a little bit of gap on the sides, we'll use flathead screwdrivers. We'll put them in on either side. Usually where there's enough meat, usually where there's a hole. If you get towards the middle, it gets a little thin again. So if you can get in here on both sides of it, you try to pry it and pull both sides at the same time. And by doing that, you'll get it to relieve off the drive shaft up in the center. Usually that's salted up in place, and then you'll be able to get the gear case down. If it's really salted and stuck, I'd say just bring it to mechanic to have them do it, because they're going to have more tools and they're going to know what's holding it up inside. That's when you're getting into some really bad situations. So if you guys can get it this far, you guys got this. We're going to pop this out and we're going to bring it over to the table. That's it. Alright, since we're here, this is what it looks like up underneath. See if we can get some light in there and show you kind of what it looks like a little bit better. Alright, here's your shift shaft right here. That's going to line up on your shifter. You can see we got the pliers here, helps move that and won't allow it to fall down in place. Back in here, see this guy, this is your water pickup tube. That's where the water goes up into your engine. If you have a meltdown where your impeller is disintegrated and the cap is melted, a lot of times those pieces will go up this tube and up into the engine block. If you have something that severe, then you've got damage up inside the power head and clogged up this tube. So that is definitely no fun. You want to take it to a mechanic for that, because that's beyond doing at home. And you can see your holes here, your exhaust comes out, and a little bit of salt in the back here. And we'll clean that up. So that's what it looks like up inside. Alright, so here's the tools that we used on pulling the gear case. We got our 14mm deep socket, 14mm combo wrench, open end, closed end. Sometimes you'll see they have the ratchet box ends on it. A lot of times they won't fit up in place, so I usually just stick with this one. I know a lot of guys like the ratchet ones that you can use on there, but a lot of times the Hondas are too close, you can't get them up in there. 6mm Allen head. If you're not going to put it back the same day, bag all your parts, those screws and everything. We're going to clean those up, get this off of them. We're going to grease them all up when we put them back in place. Don't forget your vice grips to hold your shift shaft in place. Large flathead screwdrivers if you got to pry it out, and the rubber mallet or a 2x4 to bang the back side out, so you can get a gap on it and be able to pry it out of place. So these are what you're going to need for that part of it. All right, so we've taken our gear case. I put a gear case in the vise in the garage. There's a rag wrapped around the bottom of the skeg so that I'm not going to scar up the bottom of it when I put it in the vise, but at least I have it where I can just work on it right in front of me. What we're going to do now is 12mm combo or ratchet. We're going to take the 4 screws off our housing cover, and we have our impeller kit. Our number is 06192-ZW1-000. I'm going to put that number in the description so you guys have that. Other things we're going to need for this is razor blade and our grease. And we're going to take this all apart, and I'm going to show you guys along the way. Alright, so I didn't run into it here, but we're going to use this screw out front here, this leading one for you, the bolt. If this is salted up, and you guys have had this and it hasn't been done in years and years, and this gets salted, a lot of people are like, oh, you know, just put a torch on it, heat it up down in there. Problem is with these are plastic housings on these. Most of the Hondas, unless you have the really old Mercury style gear case, that one's a metal one. But most of these are all going to be plastic. Down below as well is you have your seals under here, so you really don't want to heat this up too much, because then you're going to be melting the seals down, then you're going to be doing those and the cover. So it gets really hard to do it. Try to work it back and forth, try to spray it with as much penetrant that you can get in there, and just try to work it back and forth as much as you can. I've seen them before where 3 bolts will hold it down and it'll run fine, and you'll have one busted off in there. You do really want that, but if this thing is getting really old and you're almost 20 years old, it doesn't really matter at that point. It's out of warranty, but just try to watch how much heat you put on these here. This is at 4 years now, and this is the first impeller change on it from the factory. No grease, no nothing on any of this. So it's a good thing we're getting to it before it gets too salted up and too old. Okay, so all our bolts are removed. We're going to get underneath this. We're going to push it up a little bit, get a screwdriver underneath, start to pop it up. We're going to slide that up. Alright, so our impeller is going up with it. There is our keyway right here. You can see there's a lot of salt in there. I'm going to slide that out of the way. We're going to take this off. We're going to slide it up. Slide it up the shaft. And you guys can see what it looks like in there. You can see how it's kind of splayed out a couple of different ways. So we're going to change this out. We're going to change out our keyway. We're going to take off our plate. We're going to change our gasket underneath that. We're going to swap out what we can in here, and there's an O-ring around this. So we're going to change all that out. It all comes in the kit, and we're going to show you what's in there. We also try not to let any of the paper fall down in the cracks. Just try to keep everything out of there and clean. Alright, so this is what comes in your kit. Here's our box. This is what comes in here. You've got your O-ring, your gasket that goes around the housing cover. You've got your keyway that you change out, your impeller, and you have your gasket. The base gasket that goes underneath your metal plate. So these is what comes in the kit. I'm also going to put in the descriptions the other impeller kits for the other 90s and 75 horsepowers. You have your Mercury style gear case, which you see sometimes the black paint is underneath it. That is the metal cover. And then you have, after that, you have your carbureted style 90s, and then you have your EFI after that one. So there's 3 different types. So I'm going to put all those in there so that you guys don't get confused or get the wrong one. But sometimes too, you could also order just the individual parts. As you can see on these, everything is numbered on there. So boats.net has all the schematics. You can go on there, find everything you need, and we're going to get this back in there. We have our new O-ring, which is dry, and then we have our housing. So a lot of times you'll see right here you have the gasket that goes in place. A lot of times this newer gasket is a little smaller. I like to stretch it a little bit, not too much pressure where I'm going to snap this and break it off, but I just like to give it a little bit of a tug and a little pressure on it. The other thing I like to do too is, I've got my new tub of grease here. I'm going to get some grease on my fingers, and I'm going to run it all along this O-ring here, because I want it to help kind of stick inside this housing. So when I go to put it on, and I go to spin the impeller and the shaft, I don't want this to come out and fall out of place. I want to stay right in there. There's some guys I've worked with will use the Softex from Quicksilver. They'll use that on there. It's a little gummy and stickier, but that's what I want it to be like. I'm also going to get some grease inside the housing as well. On other types of boats, you'll see that you have your water pickup tube cover right here. We'll grease that as well, and some kits will also have a replacement for that, but not with this style Honda. There you go. That's ready to go on. Alright, so we got everything cleaned up. You can see this whole area right here is cleaned up with a razor blade. Our metal plate, or base plate, this gets reused, so don't throw that out. We got our new gasket here. A little bit of grease on everything, right around your detents there. This guy goes down first. You're going to line your holes up on here, over the top and down. Everybody gets lined up perfectly. See how the shape matches up going along the edge? Same with our cover over the top. Right there. That part's done. Next part, more grease. Grease all around here, a little bit more on. Then we put our grease on our shaft in here, right where the notch is. That's where your keyway is going to go. Alright, so our keyway slides and fits right inside the notch. We'll put a little grease over the top of that, and it's going to hang out and stick right there. But when we put our impeller on, our impeller is going to slide over the top, and the keyway for that is going to line right up. As you grease everything as well, I like to get some on the shaft on the high spots, right around there and around the collar at the top. I do not put it on the tip of the drive shaft though, because I don't want it to lock itself up or get stuck in there where you're trying to put the gear case back up in, but then it's only got like a 1/4 of an inch of gap and I can't get it up all the way. It's from the grease stuck at the end of the tip of this drive shaft trying to go up into place, up into the block, that it'll kind of lock itself out. So we just put it around the sides, nothing on top. Slide this on and we line it up in place. Just like that. And push it down. Okay? That's that part. Next thing, you put grease all over the outside of the impeller. Coat, coat, coat. And that's it. Not a ton, not all over the place. On our cover. Go to our cover next. Everything's greased inside. Remember all that we did? I'm going to slide this over the top. I'm going to try to get it so you guys can see it a little bit better. Alright. Our pickup goes to the back, the water pickup part right here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to turn the drive shaft. We're not going to turn the cover. We're going to leave that in place. We're going to actually turn the shaft. You see how the impeller will turn? In a clockwise motion, we're going to turn it and then lower the cap down. And that's it. And then it lines up. You got it on your detents. It lines up perfectly on the little nubs there. Right down over the place. Spun exactly where it needs to be. We're going to grease our bolts, put our 4 bolts back in. And that's real time. I mean, that's not really, I mean, might take a little time in between breaks and stuff, but there's really not a whole lot. They're fairly quick to do. Most of the time it's just tracing, getting the gear case in and out of the motor. And that's about it. Otherwise, everybody gets greased up real well, and we put it all back together. So just before I'm finished here, I know somebody's probably asked me this, every single bolt and screw on these motors has a torque specification. We don't look it up all the time for every little bits and piece that we do. But on these, since it's a plastic cover and there is the metal insert in there that helps take some of the pressure, all we do is just snug these down. That's it. I still got some left to go on here, and that's it. I just snug it. I don't ratchet down on it. I really don't try to get too much on it. They're not going to go anywhere. It's really not under pressure. It's just you're running it and you're pushing the water through the pump itself. There's also the tube pushing down on top of here, so it's not going to go anywhere, so we really don't ratchet down hard on it. Everybody's greased, they're good to go, and our shift that's up here, you guys can just see it right there. We're going to grease that up well. Not a lot on top, just grease around the sides of it. We're ready to go back to the boat. Alright, so we're going to do this in real time. I'm going to show you guys what we're going to do. Got my rag ready. I got 1 bolt greased up and ready to go. We're going to get our gear case and put it up there. You know, we got our vice grips on here just to wiggle it around if we need help. Plus it won't let it fall down in place. We've got our gear case. We've got a little bit of grease around the tip of it, but not on top. We're going to put it up in and try to guide it straight up through. That's it. See how it wiggles right there? We're on our shaft correctly. Everything falls into place. If it doesn't, you pull it down, you grab a hold of the shaft, and you turn it, and then put it back up in place. So hopefully that the teeth will line up where it's going up into the bottom of the flywheel. Alright. We are pretty close right there. Looks close. Looks close, but it's just not right. That's it, right there. You see that pop? That was it. Perfect. Detents lined up. Your gap is smaller. You're ready to go. You got your one bolt already pre-greased, ready to go. You get it up in there and screw it in, and then you can let go. Don't take this one tight, just get it up close enough so you can have wiggle room so you can get the rest of the other ones in. And that's how you get it on there. Alright, don't forget on the front you can actually get a ratchet on that, 14 mil. On the back you do actually have to use a combination wrench on this one here. And our black keeper that's up underneath there, I believe we were talking a 6 mil Allen head on that one. So you can see that one there. Our 6 mil for that going up in place. Alright, so everything's back in place. We have our 4 screws greased, 2 on the other side. We have our large headed one underneath here. That's also the 14 mil, but it's the long bolt that goes up through. We have our cover here with the 6 mil screw at the top. That's also greased. Everything gets greased that goes back in because it's in the saltwater environment. Our shift is good on the front. We're still in neutral here, and we're still in neutral at the control box up at the helm. So what you would do next is you would hook it back up to water. I preferably like to actually put it in the water, then run it on the earmuffs or put inside a big bucket, but I don't have that. So you would run it, make sure that, you know, neutral's still neutral, the motor starts where it's supposed to. It doesn't start in gear. That would be bad. And make sure you're pumping water out of your telltale up above. Make sure you got a nice good stream to it. And shift it a couple times at the dock. Make sure, you know, your shift linkage is all hooked up right, and that's about it. So you should be good to go. Usually, as long as your control box is in neutral and this guy's in neutral, you're good to go. If it's not, one it'll be locking up. So I hope that helped you out. That's where I'm going to leave this video for you. Next time we get this thing in the water, we'll show you how it's running, because if I put it on the earmuffs and run it, I'm basically cheating it and forcing water into it. I'm not drawing water. So I hope that helps you guys out. Hope that helps you get your gear case on and off. If you like this, don't forget to like and subscribe. Hopefully I'll get some more Honda stuff up for you. I don't think there's too much else going on. We may have a Yamaha trim and tilt issue coming on one of my friend's motors. So maybe play with that a little bit. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. So it's starting to rain out anyway. We're not going to go down to the boat ramp, so I'm going to run it on the muffs here for you so you guys can see what you should do, how to shift it, so you're not just slamming it into gear and having the prop, you know, no load on it. So it's just going to be nice and gentle. We're going to run it. You're going to see the telltale, the piss tube, will clog up a little bit. Sometimes it's the grease, sometimes it's salt and chunks that have been sitting there for a while that are trying to come out. A lot of times I'll keep a paper clip on board just so I can try to poke out the junk that's in that hole there. But you'll see this time I just get to tap it and it'll come right out. So hope you guys enjoy it, and here you go.